Welcome to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast and a brand new episode, which is another Knowing Me, Knowing You story. Now, Diarm is with me. Diarm, this is a story we have been looking to tell for a little while now.
Yeah, Nicole, this is one I've been trying to get for a while, and they're not easy people to get on an interview. They don't go on about this a whole lot. So I'm delighted that we are joined by Richard Sheane and Georgie Sheane, and we have the story of Cooley coming up. So it's a big episode. It's one we've been looking forward to for a while.
I have to admit, I am really looking forward to hearing this because you hear a lot about Cooley Horses. We follow a lot of them on the podcast. We're going to talk about a few of probably the most famous Cooley Horses a little bit later on in the show. But I think it would probably be a good place to start as to how Cooley Farm actually came about. And Georgie, that's probably one for you because I think you were fairly instrumental in the early days in the actual kind of pushing the Cooley part.
Yeah, well, I got married 10 years ago and we set up the business 12 years ago. And we saw that there was a niche in the market for selling primarily event horses at the time. We had no money, but we were lucky enough that my family home had a few stables and an outdoor arena, and we said we'd give it a crack. So we kicked on and we sold my car, bought a horse, and sold the horse, and it continued till now. We were pretty keen from the start that we would give ourselves a prefix. We wanted to stamp the horses with our name, and Richard's home place was Cooley, which was about 2 miles down the road from my place, which was Ballinacoola, and so we came up with the Cooley, mixing both of them.
Okay, so that's how Cooley came about.
Something that was easy to say in any language as well, because I think a lot of the prefixes are very sort of complicated language for all the world, and if you're in Italy or maybe in the States or wherever, it was always pronounced wrong, whereas Cooley for the most part is pretty hard to get wrong.
Yeah, if you get it wrong, you're struggling. But as a commentator, I have to admit, I wish more people thought along your lines. It is.
You know what I love about that? I love that even at the point where we're selling a car and selling the first horse, there's already a grand plan in place that we will make this something that can be in all of the different countries. I guess from a business point of view, and we've been through it at Echo Ratings for the last number of years. But tell us a little bit about starting out. You've 3 kids now, and you've built obviously a great team around you in terms of Cooley generally. You've built a great brand in terms of Cooley generally. But what were the tough points of starting off? I'm sure like balancing work and family was very difficult at the outset, and working together as a couple again, a big challenge. So how tough was it in those early days?
Yeah, no, it wasn't challenging in the sense that in our lives it's just work. That's all we do. We're very lucky we've got 3 children now, but at the start it was just work. And to be honest, it's still just work. Richard is an incredibly focused individual, and he, his plan was always, if we work hard enough and we believe in this enough, we are going to succeed. And so we're lucky that family is very, very, very important to us. But we're also lucky that we both like to work really hard. They just have to come with us. So from the very start, we just slogged our guts out. And I don't think we've let up. I think we maybe drive ourselves even harder now because the success has come and we want to keep the success going. So it's maybe harder now than it was back then.
Yeah, you've more to lose the more success you get in one sense. But I mean, I think that the sort of no secrets behind it, which is actually just hard work, is the admirable bit. Each year, we've seen more and more Cooley horses competing, whether it's nationally or internationally, building all the way, I guess, to what was a huge moment for you guys, I'm sure, last year at Kentucky when Cooley Masterclass took that first 5-star victory. I guess that would have been a special moment. Where were you, or what were you thinking pre it or before? I told you that it was a good possibility before it, but you were, you know, you don't listen to those things.
I have to admit, when Diarm says, "Oh, Cooley's got this much chance of winning," do you get a little bit kind of put off by that pressure, or do you enjoy it?
No, we enjoy the pressure. We like the pressure.
Okay, there you go. You've got to do some more stats.
To go back a time, that when we started out, we realised that success only came from good riders. So we took a plan, which we're very open about, that we would sell the likes of Ollie horses at cost or below cost, because we wanted them to promote the brand. So Ollie winning Kentucky was it all coming together, the master plan. But I can remember 10 years ago, Richard saying, a Cooley horse will win Kentucky. Like, there was never any doubt that it would happen. It just happened quicker. But it was an incredibly emotional moment. Ollie and Richard were both in tears on the phone from from both sides of the Atlantic. And yeah, it was unbelievable. And then to do it twice there's no words for it, really. There's no words.
Yeah, I think that, I remember I was out there in Kentucky for the first of them, and I remember, the emotion from, well, any Irish person there, feels very connected to, the Irish horses and the Irish brand doing well out there. But also I remember in Oliver's interview after, him being quite emotional about that connection. So it is interesting to know the plan was in the making for a long time.
I think one thing that as well, it's great to focus on making money and trying to make the business big and everything else, but those results are, they're almost a bigger thing. Obviously, they create opportunities to do the other parts of the business, but that it is a major thing. I'm not, as you guys well know, I'm not really one for hanging out at these big events or whatever, because I feel to do my job well here in Ireland, I need to be here, because I need to be at the shows and at the sales and at the whatever to get the horses. But it is an incredible, thing when the horses win. I remember one of the first sort of big, we'll say, results in our opinion was, I actually can't tell you the year, I'm sure you guys probably can, but the two highest placed Irish horses at Le Lion d'Angers were both Cooley horses, both obviously from us. And that, I remember thinking, Jenny, maybe we're getting places now. This is, beginning to come along. And then a couple of years after that, we had the 2 3-star wins at Blenheim. And then obviously we've had the results we're talking about there with Masterclass. But those, it's very, very rewarding for the horses to go on. And people ask, did you know the horses were this, that, and the other? And I'm the first to say, some of them, yeah, for sure. Masterclass, I always thought it was an absolute machine of a horse, and he went obviously to a very good rider. But there's some of the other horses that really surprised us, and it's equally as good on either end. That you're, it's proof that the product you're selling is what's working. And I think when we were in the business, maybe 4 years, so we'll say 8 years ago, I remember saying, if we don't have what's now a 5-star top 3, I thought actually, within the next couple of years, we're not selling the right horses. And it was great that we've had now, several of those. So it's like you can do your best and have the ideas, but the results have to speak. And that's why we've always gone on the line that let the horses do the talking. Because you meet the horse business, and I'm sure every business in the world, you meet lots of people with buts and maybes and if and so on. But, results are results, and there's nobody, that's it. End of story. They're either winning or they ain't. So that was, those things are great, really, really big milestones in the whole thing.
How closely do you follow all of the Cooley horses that have gone on? Obviously, there's a few high-profile ones that are sort of the more obvious choices. But do you follow the careers of pretty much every horse that leaves the yard?
Yeah, pretty much. We do, and our team at home would be even better on the old watching them than I am myself. But on a Sunday evening, we have a yard WhatsApp group, and between everybody that works for us and obviously looking ourselves, I think we have a good idea of a lot of what those horses did that weekend. Whether it's at a pre-novice to a 5-star right through. And obviously some horses stick in your mind more than others, but when you put your money down on the first day and buy them, you shouldn't be forgetting them, and I certainly don't.
No.
Do you want to start, Nicole?
Go on, give us a stat. I was wondering how long it would take till we had a good old stat thrown into the mix.
I'm just looking at them here because you know the way they always go on about their horses doing the talking. And one of the ones that I'm looking at here is their show jumping rates. And we can talk about cross country because they're right up on that as well. But one of the really interesting ones, and we'll come and talk about the team at home as well in a little while, but they're over 50% show jumping clear. This is all the Cooley horses in 2019. And it's really interesting, and the way that we compare that when we're looking at something like that is comparing it against the global average. So you're trying to think, okay, well, how does the horses with the Cooley prefix, go on to compare against the others? The show jumping clear rate around the world at all international levels is 31%, and the Cooley horses are over 20% above that. And you see the same trend when you go up to the top levels. 4-star short, 4-star long, and 5-star Cooley horses are still 20% above the global average. So while these guys probably won't be tracking the data quite that in detail, it's certainly coming through, which is part of what makes.
To be totally honest, I don't want to sound big-headed or anything with this, but that particular stat doesn't totally surprise me because I have always bought jumpers. I came from the show jumping world, and it's a real sort of thing for me that the horses are careful jumpers. Because I especially actually probably the sport has sort of lended me a hand in a way, the way it's gone in the last whatever couple of seasons, that the show jumping is so influential now. But I've always tried to buy jumpers, and I think jumpers are safer cross country horses as a rule. And then obviously, well, those stats speak for themselves. But as I say, with the risk of sounding a bit big-headed, that's a stat that I'm obviously very pleased to hear, but not totally surprised.
Well, it reminds me of a time when Echo Rittens was starting out a little while ago, or maybe not starting out, but maybe a couple of years ago. And I remember there was a spell of maybe 2 or 3 events where I put up certain, like, I think was it Cooley Rourke's Drift. I think he had the Irish 5-star dressage record at Badminton and then went on to have a 20. And I think there was a while there where I put up 2 or 3
Was it the dressage.
Yeah, well, sort of, but I put up these dressage records on a couple of Cooley horses, like maybe for 3 weeks in a row. Each of them had 20s. I think was it Cooley Cross Border and Kim Severson had done something similar.
Yeah.
And I got a text from these guys telling me, enough with these dressage stats. We have great jumpers, so stop concentrating on the dressage.
Don't worry,
no, I do remember
Richard,
that term.
You're not the only one that's been a victim of the curse of Diarm. It's a fairly well-known infliction.
It's a fairly well-known
sometimes,
situation.
yeah.
Okay. Good.
One of the things I would love to talk to you about is, obviously, you've had a number of horses go on to championships now, and Cooley Rourke's Drift being one of them. One of the others would be Cooley SRS, who is now known as Willinger Park Cooley. Now, he is now in Australia. Have you had other horses that have gone out to that side of the world, or would he be one of the first?
No, I haven't had that many horses gone to Australia. I have had some, but not a huge number. Like when I say there might be 4 or 5 of them out there, and a couple of those horses that went out there would be more of an amateur type. So he would definitely be by far the highest profile horse to go out there. So it'll be very interesting to follow his progress out there.
I'm looking forward to seeing him. Hazel Shannon has the ride on him now, but that would have been one of the really high profile transactions. Actually, it's not often you see a horse of that stature moving. We've had a couple recently, particularly in the run up to the Olympics, but it is one to keep a close eye on. So podcast listeners, there you go. You can follow the Cooley horses at home with Cooley, well, Willinger Park Cooley, as he is now known. Is there a rule that they have to keep the Cooley in there? Or have they chosen to do that? Because obviously they've changed his name to give him a prefix that belongs to them.
Yeah. No, we are absolutely passionate about the fact that if you buy a Cooley horse, you can call it whatever you want. You've paid your money, you can call it what you want. But the reality of it is that, we stamp them because we're very proud of them and feel that, you buy a Cooley horse, you buy slightly into a culture where they're very important to us, and that people like to keep the name. It's like I could count on one hand probably the number of times that somebody has said not to have a Cooley on it. And then we always work with the breeders if they have their prefix on, because in our opinion, the breeders are the most important in our chain. And we will work with them and make sure that their prefix stays on the horse. Obviously, the whole hillabaloo with the FEI is a hard one because we have to pay out an awful lot to get the Cooley onto the books, but it's just something we have to work within. Yeah.
So
I guess that must be a huge cost, is it? That from the prefix.
Yeah, if I told you or Richard the figure, actually, there might be a long discussion.
$1,000 or a little more, which is a lot of money, especially on a horse that you take a small profit on, which inevitably, you do at times. So it really eats away at it. And sometimes Georgie says, I say to Georgie, well, we got, 5,000 out of that horse. And she said, well, no, not actually. We take the vet and the name and the blah, blah, blah. We're back to 2.5, which is pretty disappointing those days. But anyway, that's the way of it.
Yeah. I guess vet must be huge. You guys, I know you guys do x-rays and scans and all sorts before making any purchase. So I guess vet must be a pretty big one for you as well.
Every horse costs about $1,000 the first week. And that's not so bad on the ones that pass everything, but the ones that don't, that's a killer, because obviously the next horse that does pass has to take that on their shoulders. So it costs a lot of money. So they are, the horses, they're fully vetted and x-rayed and so on before I purchase them. Then they arrive and they, normally get wormed and teeth done and reshod and sort of organised in several different manners, or I feel their, blood's taken if I feel they need a, they're short of a mineral or something like that. I'll take their bloods and check that out. We copper dose them all because most horses in Ireland are short of copper. So the first week is a really expensive week for us. But it's very important because that gives us sort of you're on a level playing field then with the horses to work them, and to, they're generally probably going into a little harder work with us than they have been before then. So you need them in, in tip-top condition to train them and have them in a fashion, in a way that people can come from abroad and try them correctly and, see really what they are and make their mind up whether they want to make a purchase or not.
So how do you get your Cooley horses? I take it you buy them in, as opposed to, do you breed any yourselves, or are they sourced?
So we breed a few. We breed a few, but that's a very small thing, and that's Georgie's department. She enjoys breeding a few, but no, we buy all our 99% of our horses in.
Okay.
And we buy them at any age, from a foal to 6-7 year old, and and anywhere in between. We're buying more and more younger horses, i.e. foals and so on, because we're finding it hard to get exactly the product we want and need. But that's by buying these foals and younger horses, you're getting in closer contact with your breeders, and that's helping you then, to get them to breed what you want, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of the breeders. We've done a couple of sort of conferences recently and that, and I have to say they're very, very susceptible to what you need and stuff. And I think the difference for them with the likes of us doing the conference of that is, it's not my opinion what I can sell, which I think is a big thing for them, because I think they get a lot of people, which obviously people that are trying to help, I have nothing against them, but they're not really in the marketplace. And they're telling them to do this, that, and the other, and they're doing it, and it ain't really working. And it's nice for them to have somebody that's selling their breeding, we'll say, selling their product, to be able to say to them, well, this is what we think you should do and whatever. And hopefully, as I say, that's something I'm going to promote in the next 10 years, is to really try and to help those guys, because without them we have nothing. But to get back to your sort of original question, where do the horses come from? So I would like to think that at every show in Ireland, there is somebody that's connected to us there. And when I say connected to us, I have a team of guys that watch for horses for me around the country, and they would, some of them I would trust them to buy horses on my behalf. Others would recommend horses that I would then subsequently go and see, and several different versions. But basically, they watch for the horses. And if there's a horse there that I end up purchasing, in other words, ends up in Cooley Farm, they get a commission from that. So it's in their interest to be keeping their eyes peeled, because if they can, they're going to earn money and find the product. And then obviously I go to a lot of shows and so on myself, and then we get some from the sales, less and less so, I'm afraid. But and every which way, the horses come from everywhere, and some very good horses from the most unlikely sources, and vice versa. So it's a constant ongoing battle, but it's a bit like my competition. As driven as Oliver Townend is to win Kentucky, if I miss a horse, it's like coming last in Kentucky for him. So I'm on that 24/7.
Nicole, I think this could be a chance to get the secrets. This is the bit where I don't know how much we'll get, but we've got listeners now all over the world who spend their lives or at some part of their lives are going to be trying to pick, an event horse, and again, all the different ages. This is the bit, Richard, where we're going, okay, now you're not going to tell us everything as to how you get them in, or you wouldn't get them ahead of us, but what kind of things, what's your general rules in terms of how you begin to select them, or what you're looking for when you get that report from some of your guys around Ireland and around the world?
So it's, to be honest, I think this is actually an area that is often really quite complicated, and it really isn't. And I don't think there is any secrets or things involved in it, although a lot of people seem to think there is. But to me, there's not anyway. And the first thing I say, I've bought plenty of bad horses, and that's how I know now what a good one is. And I still buy a not bad one just to remind myself. But I think the big thing is, like, first and foremost, temperament. Because if you do not have a horse that you can train, it doesn't matter whether he's absolutely useless or unbelievably talented. It won't make any difference. He's the same thing. So you need a really good temperament that you can train and make use of. And then obviously you need a good type, a nice uphill model that is going to be easy. Again, this sort of goes back to making it easy to train, because if he's a nice uphill model and stuff, he's going to be easier to train on the flat. And he has 3 paces. You're immediately sort of somewhere in the dressage area. And then for me, I love a real athletic jumper, and a careful jumper at that. And after that, there's a lot of, talk about conformation and this, that, and the other. And obviously you don't buy a horse with a twisty leg or a terrible hock or whatever. But I think an awful lot of stuff can be, can put people off that probably shouldn't. And so I suppose, in a nutshell, we try and buy a nice temperament horse, a good model that moves and jumps. And after that, especially at the stages, we would buy most of them being young horses, and I'm still talking 4 or 5 as a young horse. They don't know that much. After that, then it's what you put in and how you train them, and that's highly, highly important, that you have the right, people to train them, and the ability yourself or the trainers around you to do that. But I think it's a real area that's really made into a complicated scenario that, in my opinion, isn't. It's you need. I actually think my team on the ground will say finding them, that's more complicated than buying the horses. It's to find those horses. That is the trick, to have the availability to be able to get to that horse and buy him.
As the business has grown, Richard, I'm just looking at the number of horses who are competing internationally year on year at Cooley, and as you say, it is, it feels like you guys have been around forever. But actually, when you look back, 2010 was the first horse that competed internationally. 2011 you had 4 competing internationally, all the way up to we're now well over 100. Well over that again. Like there's 160, 170 I'm looking at here who've competed internationally since that very first horse. As you've grown, are you buying more in? Do you have to be very disciplined? If they're just not out there, you just can't buy them? No, you
can't. So I always say we're very, very lucky with the clientele we have, in the sense that we have a lot of the big pro riders, and we have a lot of very good clients and very loyal clients. There's definitely clients we're dealing with today that we were dealing with 12 years ago, and lots of them. But there's pros and cons to that, and the pros is that you know their form, you know what they want, what they don't want, you know how they operate. But for us, we have to then have the product they need, and that's, you know, in 99% of their cases, a very quality animal. So there's no point in us buying horses unless they're to a standard. So sometimes, yeah, it's very hard to find them, and we hit a bit of a sort of a low patch. But basically, in roundabout figures, we try to buy about 100 horses a year, and we sell about
100
horses a year, and then we have about 100. So that's,
and you have 100 as well. You have 100 in.
We have 100 horses Cooley all the time. Yeah, all the time. But it sounds an awful lot of horses, but it's not. You know, that's talking from foals, yearlings, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, but there will be 100 about the place. There's about 30 in work.
That is a lot of horses.
And about 100.
How long does it take you for those horses to turn over? If you're looking for a particular product for a client, does that come in and out fairly quickly, or do you keep them in at Cooley?
So average stay time in Cooley is 3 months for a riding horse. So a riding horse is here an average of 3 months. Some horses get sold the next day, some horses are there 18 months. So, but the average is 3.
I saw that new contraption you have in your new stables for mucking out. That must make life a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've recently bought. No, we bought about 8 years ago a farm, but we've recently built a new facility, which we've had horses in Georgie's home place, which was Ballinacoola, and that's been great to us. And all those horses we're talking about now have gone through there. But we've sort of outgrown it, I suppose, and we've sort of purpose built this facility, which is very easy to work in, and that's just an example of it. The stables are mucked out with a machine. Nobody's going around with a wheelbarrow.
Can I just stop for a second on the fact that a machine does the mucking out? Because a lot of people listen to this podcast at probably 5 o'clock in the morning while mucking out before they go to work. And right now, they will be looking down at themselves. It'll be chucking it down with rain. They'll be thinking, where can I get myself one of those machines? How do you get a machine? Yeah.
So it's actually a sort of a regular machine. It's probably more to do with the stable design. So the stables open completely at the front, and you can drive the machine straight in. So we're lucky in Ireland, we can buy straw, very, very good barley straw, which we buy off the same farm in Wexford every year that has really nice tall barley straw. So it's a really beautiful white straw, and it's long, so it means it lasts really well underneath the horses. So we muck out once a week, and bedding goes in then during the week. So it means there's a lot less time. So my guy mucked out 10 this morning in 4 hours. So they were completely mucked out after a week, bedded down, ready to go again. Whereas if you did that, the 10, I would say it would be 2 hours a morning every day, the other way around. So the hours are pretty easy to figure out. It's a huge bonus to be able to do that. But a lot of what we try to do is like that, to try and make things easier and more efficient, because we do have quite a number of horses there, and we need to be able to get through them and get them done. We've built an indoor riding facility there as well. So obviously, with the old weather in Ireland, is not known for being fantastic. So that means we can operate inside 365 days a year and nights now with the lights. So that's great.
I think on the home team, Richard, it's probably worth mentioning, because the success of Cooley is more than just you guys. At home,
100%. Yeah.
I know Katie O'Sullivan plays a massive role in all the success behind the scenes, and I know you're all a close knit team from every single person in there. So, tell us a little bit about who else is in there.
So we have 7 staff there, and Katie O'Sullivan is our lead rider, and then we have another rider, Beth Burton, and we have a new rider, a young guy called Cian McHugh, that's sort of joined us in the last 12 months. So we have all those guys, and then we have Joanna Barnes and Brendan and several, lots of other people working there as well. And then obviously there's all the vets and the farriers and the blah. But we do have a very closely knit team. I put a lot of that down to my wife's doing, because I'd probably fall out with them all after a week, but she doesn't.
He's impossible. You couldn't work for him. You can possibly.
Behind every good man, Georgie, is an even better woman.
Oh, good.
But
a crazy woman.
Those are really, really good guys. And there's one thing with these horses, whether you're selling them to them or you have them yourself, like, success only comes with good riders. And that's something Paul Hendrick said to me a long, long time ago, and it's stuck in my head. So if I'm bringing back nice horses to Cooley Farm and there's somebody there that's, sort of half able to ride, it's a waste of time. So I'm very, very lucky to have people like Katie and Beth and so on to ride for me, and then the other people to really look after them. And there's a large number of horses there, and everybody's on their game, and we need to know if one needs an injection or whatever, that they're sick or whatever. It can't be missed. They have to be. And I think that's one of our things. The whole team go above and beyond to make sure those horses are 100% from start to go. But most of the horses are quite expensive to buy in, and you can't have people that aren't that way minded. And I can guarantee every one of them is as proud as I am when Townend wins the big class or whoever does well, and they all they remember the horses, because there's lots of horses going through, but we work with all of them as individuals. I try not to make it very factory-like. The horses are all in sort of bunches of 10, so there's a rider and a groom with 10, and it keeps it that it's not a big factory outlet, and it's something even if I have 40 or 50 horses and work in the future, I want to be very mindful that it doesn't become a factory scenario, because that's not what we're about. I like to think we know the horses well, and I always say if I have to pull out a horse and show it to a client and I don't know about it myself, that's the day I need to give up. So I'm on the road a lot looking at horses and so on, but I can ring any of the riders in the evening when I'm driving home or whatever, and I know all the horses they've ridden that day, and I'll have particular interest in one or two, and they can tell me, they improved or they disimproved or whatever. And then a couple of mornings a week, I would work with them all. They'd say, well, Richard, I want you to see this and this one or whatever, or we go schooling to a showgrounds or whatever. So I like to think I have a good hold of all the horses and know what they're about, and that then allows me then to sort of channel them towards a particular client, which is obviously sort of, it's key that the right horses get to the right people.
I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because with that many horses, I think that is possibly part of the recipe to your success, because they're all individual and you have to know each of them inside out. We've talked a little bit about a few of the key moments. Obviously, Cooley Masterclass winning Kentucky would be one of them. You've had top threes at 5-star. Is there an aim? Is there one thing that you would love to win that would really mean the world to you, like championships, Olympics?
No, win everything.
Win everything. So if the podium in Tokyo is full of Cooley horses, you'll think, yeah, we've done all right.
Yeah, no, it sounds silly, but our aim would be that the Cooley horses won every big class and the Olympics and the Worlds and whatever else. Now, whether it'll happen or not, but I'm training up 3 kids, so it doesn't happen in my time. Hopefully it'll happen in theirs.
Yeah, I love that. That's what you hear. I think, I love Liverpool, as everybody gets bored with a lot on this, but I think, yeah.
You really?
I do, yeah. But that answer reminds me of, they asked Virgil van Dijk what would he rather win, the Premier League or the Champions League, there when we were going for both last season, and he just kind of looked at them, really confused and said, no, we want to win everything. Yeah, like, of course we want to win everything. And that mentality, I think, is, I must say I've loved listening to the story a little bit more, because that mentality comes across. The hard work piece that we started out with Georgie comes across so much. The attention to detail comes across so much. And you know, I mentioned like what are the secrets to picking them, but like you can hear just in the way that you're talking about it that a huge part of the success, and while it's so easy to get caught up in the numbers of the success, that a huge part of the success is quite simple things like attention to detail, like looking after your staff, like working hard. So thank you, I guess, for sharing that, because it uncovers a lot of the myths I think that maybe I had built up in my own head about what kind of wizard you were going around carefully selecting horses and selling them.
No, I'm afraid not, Diarm. No wizard, I'm afraid.
No wizardry, just hard work. Guys, thank you so much. Before we let you go, can I just ask, whether it's a horse that you've got at the moment, whether it's a horse that you've sold, do you have a Cooley horse that we can watch on the podcast that our listeners can keep a close eye on that we perhaps haven't heard of yet?
Yeah, I think there's a horse. No, there is a horse, because I knew this question might come up, so I had a little think about it earlier. And I may be proven wrong, but I have a feeling there's one horse, and it's a horse called Cooley Lancer that Piggy French has.
Okay.
He's a horse. I bought him as a 4-year-old down in Limerick. I'm off a guy I do a good bit of business with, a guy called DJ O'Sullivan. And he rang me one day and just said, listen, there's a horse here, but there's people to go look at him the next day or something. So I said, here, I'll be there at 7 o'clock tonight. So I jumped in the Jeep and went. And I bought him, and he was a horse. He was like a big fat show horse when he arrived, to be honest. But he was a very good mover and jumper, and he actually was a very blood individual to ride. And anyway, to cut a long story short, we ended up doing an event with him the following spring, and Piggy bought him when she was in at Tats last year. But he's won 2 or 3 novices. And I don't know, I just have a feeling about him. As I say, I may be wrong, but I have a feeling about him, and obviously he's with a very, very good rider. So, yeah, time will tell, but he's one I personally liked a lot. Okay, that's good knowledge. So Cooley Lancer, only international the horse has done was 2nd at Rockingham this spring in the 2-star short. So we will watch a 6-year-old. Okay. Yeah, we love a little bit of an inside tip. Richard Georgie, thank you so. We've no doubt he'll be successful. We have absolutely loved hearing more about the Cooley story, and we will be looking forward to seeing what is next. And following the Cooley horses. And I will try as much as I can to keep the curse of Diarm under control for you. If you can at all, it's not good.
Yeah, we'll do our best. I learned my lesson. There's no.
He doesn't need to be looking at my dress scores.
No, thank you very, very much, Georgina and Richard Sheane, on Knowing Me, Knowing You on the Echo Ratings Eventing podcast.